Welcome to Roma to Sonoma, where we explore the rich history and vibrant culture of wine from the old world to the new world, from Rome, Italy to Sonoma, California, where I'm based. I'm a wine journalist and my name's Lane.
And my name is Pia. I'm a sommelier and I'm based here in Rome, Italy. And today we're going to be talking about, Lane, your recent trip to Georgia, which, as you know, everyone knows is one of it's the cradle of wine and considered one of the, birthplaces, if not the birthplace, depending on who you're talking to, of wine. And I know you had an amazing trip when you were there and were able to really discover some of the original winemaking techniques, great varieties, and meet some really interesting people. So yeah, looking
Yeah.
forward to hearing all about it.
Yeah, it was great. It was great. And for those who maybe aren't familiar, we're talking about the country of Georgia. The country of Georgia. You have to clarify this in the States. You do, because you say Georgia and people are like, I didn't know there was wine in Georgia. Um, so yeah, they do. That's sort of their moniker is the cradle of winemaking. That is the phrase that's used. But of course, there is like such a history of wine in so many different places around the world, but it's 8,000 years of history. So
My
it's one
goodness
of the
me.
oldest. And what's really, really unique about Georgia is that they're still using some of these very traditional methods that have been around really for the whole time. And the biggest one that will stand out to you is called Quavery. And it's
Yeah,
basically these enormous clay, I mean, vats. I'm not
yeah,
sure what you would call them. It's not an M4, it doesn't have handles, whatever, but they're buried in the ground and they're huge egg-shaped clay vats, we'll say. They're shaped like an egg, and it's literally where they put all the grapes in to ferment and then later to age, and then they top them off. And it's really interesting because the benefit to it is that well, for one thing, when these remember I told you that there was a video of like where it looked like the grapes were boiling.
yeah. I do remember that.
That does happen. It's basically they're like bubbling. It's
Yeah,
fermenting. So essentially, they put the grapes into this clay quavery,
yeah.
and that's where they ferment. And they ferment them on the skins with, some, not all, but it's traditional that they would still also be on the stems, and everything is together. They don't add anything to it. It's totally natural. So there's no chemicals, no yeast, no other types of yeast. So it's all natural fermentation. And if it were above ground, apparently that can basically, like, yeah, bubble, and it becomes unstable. So having it, this is ancient times now, they buried it for stability, and they realized that underground, it also helps moderate the temperature.
Yeah, of
So
course.
it stays cool naturally. So that's really one of the big benefits there. And then they ferment for, like, I think, maybe a month or something like that. And then they, yeah. And then it's, but they do it for both red and white wine. So that's another huge thing, is that red wine made anywhere is on the skin for a while, but white wines usually aren't. And so this produces in white wine, which is where it's more noticeable that it's different, a very dark yellow, amber colored wine, sometimes orange. Now, in natural wine, language, they would call it orange wine. But in Georgia, they prefer to call it amber wine, or that's what they've always called it, is amber wine.
Ah,
So
interesting. Okay.
yeah, isn't that interesting?
Yeah,
So and it tastes very different to a
yeah.
typical white wine, especially. The reds are, very complex, they're very tannic, of course, but then the white wines have that sort of same feel as a red wine. So if you weren't looking at it, if you didn't see it, you might think you were drinking a red wine. So even though the flavors are different, it's almost like, the way I would describe it is almost like a green tea sort of feel, like where it's a little bit kind of thing,
That's so interesting. And
right?
and also
Right.
they don't filter their wines, do they?
Filter, they don't find, so you can see cloud, they can be cloudy, they can have some sediment. Now, this is where we get like it is it is natural wine. I mean, this is how wine has always been made and what we call natural wine today, but there's really no definition for natural wine. So just, kind of know that it's a little bit murky on what is defined as a natural wine. But basically it's the same kind of technique, because really only in the last like 100 years, last century, basically like post-industrialism, where we've kind of learned how to mass produce things and preserve products. That's the only time that all of what we do now to typical wines, modern wines, is done. And that's sometimes we add chemicals. We add chemicals to like clear the wine, to we add different types of yeast so that it ferments the wine in different ways, or it can add different flavors. We do other like kind of preservatives to the wine so that it has a longer shelf life, essentially.
Right.
And so those things are new. So we're going back to really the old times. Now, the people that are lovers of this kind of wine and of natural wine, they say this is the only real way you taste the terroir. This is the only way you really get the variety. And you can
Right.
understand how that would be true. That would be true.
Yeah, so it's so funny you say that. So I heard a really interesting wine expert say that, to all of these people who take issue with natural wines and basically say that, we've perfected over time these this more kind of scientific method, but
Yeah.
scientific method to get a good product that is predictable, that is a great expression of that. And they see that as like, why would you go against those years of specialization, let's say, to then kind of throw it all away to go to natural wine. But this guy was saying that snapshot is such a short snapshot in the whole history of winemaking. So actually, this whole idea of kind of what we consider refining wine and making it into the product that we make it into now, that will last a certain amount of time, that is stable, that is predictable, that is all these things, is a really short window. And so it's sort of saying it's somewhat skewed as an approach to wine, which I thought was quite kind of interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, as I mentioned to you, right after I returned, I felt like I never really understood wine in this. I don't think you really can understand wine if you don't really understand those traditional methods. I
Yeah.
mean, I mean, it's just, I feel like there's room for all of it. I mentioned to you that, it kind of grew on me. At first I was a
I
little
remember
bit
you
like,
did say that.
I thought, I don't know if I like this, I don't know if I like that. It's not that crisp kind of, like very, I guess like this fruity sort of acidic. It's not the same. It does have that element of like, it's drier. It's there's no other way to say it except for tannic. And if you don't understand tannic, it's like, I feel like maybe saying that little bit of tea, like a little bit
Mhm.
of tea sort
Yeah,
of flavor,
I've heard
maybe
that
is,
before as well. Yeah, yeah. I
yeah.
haven't had, I don't at all have much experience with Georgian wines. I've maybe tried one or two.
Yeah, yeah, and it's natural wine too. And the wines on Giglio were the same. And actually, going through the tasting process of tasting the wines in Giglio as I was reviewing them, I kept getting that sense of like this tea. I kept thinking, well, like that one's kind of a little bit like a green tea. It's like a lighter, it's a little bit more like a pungent, but it's not that deeper flavor. And then I thought, I'm the only person that's saying this. Like I said, am I crazy? And then I did find a couple of mentions, and I thought, well, it's what I've got, so that's what I'm going to go
Yeah.
with. So, and then looking more into the whole Georgian thing, I realized that no, that's a legit kind of explanation of it. That to me explains it probably the best. For me, that was in my kind of tasting something that stood out. Not in all of them, but I think that it's not a full-on tannin, it's a lighter kind of tannin.
Yeah.
Probably the way to say it.
And I
Yeah.
remember you saying also that I think that you were kind of taken aback by how important sort of wine culture is for Georgians, right? That everyone you kind of spoke to had
Yeah.
something, an opinion or something to say
Yeah,
on.
our driver, Gudo, he was so funny because first of all, he was a character to begin with, but he kept saying from the beginning, talking about their history and their traditions, and he said, there's a famous winery there called Shumi, and I mean it's won a lot of awards. They're very good. And so we thought we should check out Shumi, and he said, well, they make factory wines. It's factory wines. And so we were all like, oh no, we don't want factory wines, like that's why would we want that? And so we've been there for like several days, and eventually we thought we should probably go check this place out. And I asked Guido, like, what does it mean, factory wine? Like, what does that mean to you? And he goes, filtered. And I thought,
I'm like,
oh.
it's okay.
But he was making it very, very clear that, like, that you're not going to get the real thing. Like, you're not going to get the terroir, because our wines are different. But Shumi is, they distribute a lot outside of Georgia, and they have a variety of wines. They don't only do like factory wines. But anyway, yeah. So they have a lot of pride, and and it's their thing. It's their thing. So why wouldn't they?
Yeah,
But
absolutely. And what about some of the grape varieties that you tried?
yeah, so the red one is Saparavi, and that's very good. I feel like they're more known for the whites though, just because it is there's such a difference there. You're not going to
Yeah.
see so much of a difference with the red wines, but and those are Cazzetelli is the big one, and then there's Mozzveni, and I'm slaughtering the pronunciation, I'll just tell you right now. And then well, maybe the way I say
Can't
them, you
tell,
can
so
you can look them up based on my pronunciation and find out. And I probably should have done that. But and the other is Kisi. I got that one right. I know I've got Kisi right. It's Kisi. And so yeah, they're those are the main ones, but they have, I believe, like up to 500 varieties there.
yeah,
And
must do.
that is amazing in and of itself, because Georgia's been parts of different countries, and at one time they were part of the USSR. And at that time, they had to pull out a lot of their vineyards and their vines to grow what would be more mass produced. And more what the outside market would want. So more international varieties. And so they lost a lot of varieties. But then when they became independent again, some people had continued to grow vines like in their own
That's
backyard for their own
incredible.
use. And so Shumi actually is the one who's a big, been a big, had a big influence in this. He went through the country finding these vines and bringing them back to life. So he's got vineyards at his winery that have like unknown variety is what
That's
they're placed on,
incredible.
but they're different varieties that all DNA tested and everything. So they do have a lot of different varieties, but those would be the big ones that I can recall, and that we were tasting mainly.
That's
Yeah.
so great. So what are your kind of big takeaways from Georgia? I mean, I'm assuming you definitely recommend it as a destination, right?
I do. I would like to go back again. I think it's yeah, there's a lot there. I was sort of surprised by the food, to be honest with you, because I really didn't know what to expect. Some of the Eastern European countries are just very, like, meat heavy, and
Yeah.
that's not really my thing. But I really enjoyed it. I lived for the breakfast. The breakfasts were incredible because they do everything like very, very naturally. So the natural yogurt, and then like all of these jams made with like combinations of flavors, like blueberry mint jam. And
Oh,
I mean,
wow.
incredible. And they have walnuts are huge in Georgia, huge. And so
Walnuts.
walnuts.
Wow.
Walnuts. I mean, you have walnuts in everything. So they had, like, at breakfast, they have this black bread with walnuts, like black walnut bread to die for. And then they would have like candied walnuts, and like in a syrup. And they have this, it's like they use walnuts like a condiment, almost like, well, I guess like pine nuts in Italian in a way,
Okay.
although, but different flavors. So they have, like, what do you call that? With you, when you use the mortar and pestle, what is that product called? The must, or the, what, a paste, we'll call it a
Yeah.
paste pesto. And then they would flavor it. They use walnuts as the base and then they flavor that. So they have like coriander or chile or garlic, and then they're used for different things. So they can use it like as a spread on bread, or they even put it like on meat or like in a stew. And so walnuts are really big, and it made me really start thinking more about walnuts. I actually have a walnut tree behind my house. And I thought it was just squirrel food because I have squirrel central here. And I actually have replanted pots and found walnuts buried in my pots. I mean, we have so many squirrels because of this tree. But now I'm going to be fighting the squirrels, I think. I don't know what I'm going to do with the walnuts, but I just feel like I don't have to think about it in a whole different way. So I liked that. And then also just for people who are kind of like me, and I'm basically vegetarian, I eat just a little meat, there was a lot to offer in Georgia.
Excellent.
I was not disappointed at all. Lots of salads, like almost like a Greek salad, because they're very, close to Greece, and soups, and lots of vegetables, just like stewed vegetables, roasted vegetables, eggplant, all that kind of stuff, potato. So I really liked the food. I was perfectly
Amazing.
happy.
And landscapes also very beautiful, right?
What is?
Landscapes, the landscapes that you saw there.
Landscapes are beautiful. And I really like Tbilisi too.
Yeah,
Um,
I've heard it's pretty special.
yeah, Tbilisi is, it's modern. It's not like, uber modern, but it definitely has, like you can
A
just tell
vibe.
yeah, it feels young, and it feels like things are just happening there, and they're innovative, and they have a lot of they're very open-minded. I just felt like but then you can see in the buildings, you can see a lot of the history. It's a
Yeah.
nice combination of things. You feel like it's got depth, there's a lot of depth there. Yeah, so
Amazing. Well, clearly we have to plan our next trip to Georgia then.
yes, we definitely do. I'm actually talking to someone about Armenia right now, so that could be in our future. Anyway,
All
but
right.
Georgia was amazing. It was fantastic. I highly recommend it, and definitely try their wines because they do export more and more. They're exporting, and yeah, I have nothing except we need to really, I feel like I just need to learn a lot more about natural wine now so that I can even better experience and understand
Yeah, you and
what's
me
going
both.
on.
I feel like I have the same. It's really like an unknown world to me.
Yeah.
But awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. And we hope you really enjoyed listening. And yeah, on to our next thing, I guess.
On to the next. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank
See you next
you.
week.